Hey there, and welcome to the Unleash Your Greatness Within podcast. I'm TJ Hoisington, your humble host.
On the other hand, if you have bad news, quite the opposite. Just try to stay out of the picture. If you're in a meeting, stay seated. Make it as brief as possible and then turn to some good news.
Now, let me pause real quick and say that if you haven't subscribed to my podcast, I invite you to subscribe. And all you got to do is go to iTunes, Apple iTunes, and type in my name, TJ Hoisington, or you can type in the title of the show, which is Unleash Your Greatness Within. Also, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, I invite you to subscribe and make sure that you click the notification button so that you're the first to be notified when we upload a new video. And by the way, we have several new videos that we will be uploading here over the next few days. You see, it's my mission and my purpose to help you and others like you unleash your greatness within and help you achieve your goals and your dreams. And as part of my podcast, I get the opportunity to interview high achievers and thought leaders from all different backgrounds and walks of life. And you know what? Today was no exception. Today I interviewed Jack Nasher. He wrote the book, Convinced: How to Prove Your Competence and Win People Over. And let me tell you something, I read this book, I went through it, a great book full of insights and ideas that can help you be more of an influencer, to help you communicate better with people and get what you ultimately want, right? Whatever that is. So without any further ado, let's jump into the interview because we talk about many of these principles. All right, let's do it. Jack, welcome to the Unleash Your Greatness Within podcast.
Thank you very much, TJ. Thanks a lot.
Hey, man, it is great to have you on the show. I had the good fortune of your team sending me an early copy of your book, which is out now, and I'll tell you what, it is a great book. So we'll get into that, but I just wanted to welcome you to the show. And one of the things that we like to do when we interview our guests is get a little background into their story, their history, and so forth. So if you could just give us your little bio, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I'm an academic on the one hand, on a practitioner on the other. So I'm a negotiation advisor right now. I'm a professor at Munich Business School and on the faculty of Stanford University. I studied at Oxford, and that's when I started working on this topic, how to convince people. So a few years ago when I was a student, so not that long ago, obviously, look at me, but a few years ago. And yeah, so ever since I was helping people, usually negotiations, company negotiations, but of course also when you negotiate on your own behalf, you have to convince others of yourself. And this is so it's kind of a special field in negotiation when it comes to salary negotiations or so on. If people think you're the best in your field, you don't even have to negotiate. So this is kind of the meta negotiation thing. But yeah, so I've been interested in influencing and reading people all my life. That's what I do. I was a magician when I was a kid, performed at children's birthday parties, and I still perform as a mentalist. I'm giving shows on, human behavior, kind of manipulation and lie detection on stage. Also did some hypnosis. I think it's very interesting because it's all about the human mind. How does the human mind work?
Wow. How
can we influence people? How can we steer people in a certain direction? And how can we analyze them and, read them and see if they're telling us the truth?
So based on your history as a child, where did you kind of fall into this path? I mean, how did it kind of come to you? I mean, this is very specific.
Yeah, it's very specific. But, when I was, I studied law and psychology and business. I studied a lot. And I was working for the United Nations for a while. And, I was in legal training. I worked for Skadden, the law firm, the Wall Street law firm. I saw that actually it's interesting that even lawyers, politicians, diplomats, they don't really know anything about human behavior. They don't understand the modus operandi of the brain because we think that, this irrational actor, people do what's best for them. Well, they don't. There's so many hidden agendas and people forming decisions, and then afterwards they rationalize them and tell you why they decided the way they decided, but it's not true. It's a post-rationalization process, but before they did it because of a gut feeling, because they liked the person, because they thought the other person was attractive, which is one of the most important points, or likability, and how can you actually influence that? That's what was really interesting to me, that we're so irrational, and the choices we make are so irrational. Now we can complain about it and say, oh, you know, the world is so unfair, or we can do something about it. And it's like JFK presumably said, it's not confirmed, he presumably said the world is unfair, but not necessarily to your disadvantage. And that's where the book comes in.
Which I wrote down here in my notes. You see, I got to show my audience here. I've got 5 pages of notes. I read your book.
Shopping list. That was a shopping list I saw.
Yeah, right. For good stuff. But let me tell you, this book, Convinced, I tell you what, I read it, and what it's filled with great research, but it's also filled with common sense and logic that I think, based on what I was reading, is often goes unmentioned. So I love how you captured many of these concepts. So I say, hey, let's go through some of these concepts, because I think, you know, our audience will really get some value out of some of the research here. I'll say, I wrote down here, my impression, I just said right here, my impression of the book is that it gives hope. It provides a new perspective on how to win with people, how to influence, and how to communicate effectively. The book is powerful and full of research. So
very nice. Thank you. I wish I had that before. I would have used it as a blurb. You know,
that's right, because you have a lot of great endorsements here. No, not a problem. So
yeah, I have. Let me just add. Yeah, that's exactly this influence thing. So that's why Robert Cialdini blurbed it. You know, he liked it. I was very happy because of, you know, he wrote one of the classics. Just one thing, because he was showing the book. Now, this is not a baseball bat, because my American friends were asking me if I, and I say, well, while a baseball bat could help you convince other people, that wasn't the intention. That was just a coincidence. No, it's not a baseball bat, you know, just for the record.
No, totally. No, I didn't even.
That's the intention I get all the time.
You do? Really? I didn't even think of that. I saw the word.
You didn't think of that? Good.
I saw the word convinced and thought, wow, powerful. Okay, so let's jump in. Let's jump into the beginning of the book. There's a couple things you pointed out. Number one, you said, quote, success or failure has surprisingly little influence on the perception of competence. And the story that you used had to do with the violinist, Jacob Bell. So maybe you give us a little background on how this kind of came about.
Yeah, that was an interesting experiment. Joshua Bell, the great famous violin player, played in Washington, D.C. at a metro station. A few years ago, the Washington Post conducted the experiment.
Right.
And, you know, they thought, and it was so interesting, they thought, wow, people would go crazy. Because even if you don't know him, it's just, you know, he plays like a god. It's unbelievable. The quality, people just have to stop and appreciate that. Appreciate true genius, beauty, or whatever you want to call it. And the funny thing is, you know, nothing happened. He played with his $4 million violin. He played the same concert he was playing the Boston Symphony Hall a week later, where the tickets sold for $100. He made a few bucks, well, actually 32 or something, because somebody recognized him and was totally flabbergasted to see him there. But the point here is that, I mean, you can be the best in the world. Now, Joshua Bell is, you know, highly respected and all that, but if he weren't, people, you know, wouldn't know. We couldn't tell. And that's the thing. And it's the same with CEOs, with executives, with politicians, with our employees, employers. We don't know. Do they really do a good job? If we don't, you know, spend time with them, if we don't see what they actually do, we will never know. And that's the point. And yet, we always have an opinion about people. We say, yeah, you know, terrible, Apollo, Jimmy Carter. Oh, you know, people, you know, my friends tell me, you know, he was such an ineffective president. Well, do you really know what he did? Well, you probably remember some of his speeches he gave, some of the things that happened while he was president, but do you really know if he was responsible? Do you really know it was him who did that? If it would have been better without him, with another president? You know, all these things. It's because it's so hard to entangle cause and effect, and yet we do it all the time. Yeah. Now, you know, if I ask you about your hairdresser, if I ask you about your dentist, you will tell me she is great, he is great, or you know, or not that good. So I'm, you know, we have to find another one. Right. But whatever you base your judgments on, I bet these aren't the real. Sorry for the noise. I'm in New York. I'm in the middle of New York. It's honking the whole day. It's crazy, the noise here. You know, we don't know what to base our judgments on, and that's my point. We don't. So what do we base those judgments on? And that's what I analyzed over the last decade. And you know, to a surprising, I came to surprising, I think, conclusions. Some are, like you say, common sense, and some aren't.
Right.
Like the distance, how far are you away from somebody, really affects how competent you're perceived. Weird thing, the distance. Why should it have an effect? But it does.
Yeah, well, and one of the things you say in the book is you have to sell your competence, right? You can't be a passerby. So explain that. You have to sell yourself.
You don't have to. If you don't, you just won't be successful, though. That's the thing. So I wouldn't tell you what to do. I wouldn't, yeah. But that's an important distinction to me, because I never tell anybody what to do. I'm just telling you that is the way it works. This is how human beings make decisions, and it's up to you if you want to use it or not. So with all my books on negotiations, on lie detection, I would never tell anybody what to do. I think it's an important thing, because I'm like a doctor who tells you these are the options you have, but it's up to you. Like a good doctor tells you, it's up to you to decide.
Agreed.
I'm not going to filter out anything, because I'm not your dad. I'm not a priest. I don't have any moral filter. I don't have any ethical filter where I say, you should do that, so I'm not going to write that down. No, I give you all the techniques,
right.
And some are quite controversial, I admit. But hey, I can't just censor it myself. I'm not going to do that. So here you have all the techniques on how to influence people that they think you're the best who ever lived, even if you're not. To be honest, that's what it is. Even if you're not, but I wouldn't advise to be fraudulent, because after you can get away with quite a lot, but people will find out eventually that if you really can't do it, you should change your job and not read my book. Okay, if you fail all the time, change your job. But if you're reasonably good,
mm-hmm.
then you should use these techniques, because they will elevate you to a different sphere. And actually, looking a bit better than you are is actually beneficial to you, because of a self-fulfilling prophecy. You will become how you're being perceived. If people think you're a loser, you will become a loser after a while.
Yeah, they'll treat you differently.
Yeah, they'll treat you differently. And with a hostile environment, you will get worse, because people will only look for your mistakes. And when people do that, you will make more mistakes. The same is the case when people think you're great. They will give you the chance to shine, and you will.
So how would someone, let's say in an office building or at their job or whatever, how would they show that, they want to move up, they want to elevate, they want to win with people more? How would they sell their skills? How would they show them?
Well, a lot of people complain about meetings because they're annoying. They waste a lot of time. Agreed. But every meeting, every interaction is a chance to display your competence. You have to understand that 95% of what people think about you can be influenced by yourself. And you should, take advantage of that. A lot of my clients say, I don't want to do that. I just want to do a good job. I want to do the job I'm paid for. Problem is just not enough. People who do that aren't the ones who succeed. And you probably have it. And many people tell me, how can she get away with this? How can he get away with that? And the reason is because they're good at using these techniques. And when I watch CEOs, when I watch high-ranking politicians, they use these techniques,
right.
Or some of them.
Right.
And it's just your decision that you have to understand that every interaction is a chance for you to show what you can do, to show your abilities. You have to understand that you cannot not communicate. It's impossible. Every time you walk down the aisle, people will form an impression of you. And knowing what really matters. Now, you don't have to change your personality at all. Just you understand the dynamics, and that will already make a difference.
You say here, which I thought was really powerful, you said here, talking about it's not as much the actual, but the perceived confidence that determines an individual's success. And this is what you said. You might think that you don't deserve any appreciation anyway. Deep inside, you probably feel that you know nothing, that you really are incompetent. If this is the case, you are in good company. Successful people often feel their success was only achieved illegitimately, that it was only due to a string of fortune and circumstance. This is known as the imposter phenomenon. Nearly 70% of, this is what you say in the book, nearly 70% of successful people describe themselves as con artists. Even the great physicist Albert Einstein considered himself to be a, quote, involuntary swindler shortly before his death. Wow. I love that. I love that. I think as I've met with leaders and high achievers over the years, when you get in conversations with them, you often can see that they're just human like everybody else, and they have fears and they have comfort zones and so forth. And, we work with people with comfort zones to help them stretch a little bit more. But I love that you said, hey, this is normal. So therefore, act as if, right? Put your best foot forward and speak with confidence. Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's a very important point what you bring up, because it's really the case that a lot of people think, and it's a good sign if you think I don't know it all, because it's a sign of wisdom. It's only when I was really young, when I just graduated from college, university, I thought I knew it all. And a lot of people, I know my students now, they're so self-confident. I mean, they're 23 years old, and they say, let's just argue a little more in class. I say, well, how about you just know, I teach you a little bit about negotiation, and then we argue. But first, you need some knowledge. So, I pretty much know everything I have to know.
Yeah.
Say, well, probably not. Yeah. And it's funny that, the more you get mature, the more you see in the world, the humbler actually you become, which is good in one way. Intellectually, it's good, but it's very bad if you want to lead people. Because if you're very, very careful, if you're very, if you don't have any self-esteem because you think, actually, I don't know anything. There's so much I could know. There's so much more out there. Well, you can't lead people, because people need somebody they can rely on. People need the feeling that they're in good hands. And that's one of the keys to showing competence. So, this is kind of a dilemma, that even though you know that you know nothing, and you're right, you still have to show confidence. And that mind, that's one of the most, a whole chapter is on that. How do you do that? And how can you do it without being a fraud, without acting as if and saying, well, I can do whatever I can, No, it's not about lying. It's not about deception. It's about showing what you have and making it visible, making your abilities visible to the entire world.
I totally agree with you. I put a few notes down here. You brought some up in your book, and I added a couple others. You talk about Bill Gates at a time when he had no operating system, and he met with IBM and told them, hey, we can have an operating system for you.
Yeah, the best in the world.
Wow. And he didn't even have the operating system at a time. Or you have Steve Jobs. I remember reading Steve Jobs, the biography on him, and there was a whole chapter on the reality distortion field. When nobody believed this aspect could be done to the computer, he said, figure it out. It can be done, right? I remember when I was 14 years old, I've never shared this with my audience before, so I'll share it. I was 14, maybe 15 years old. My parents gave my brother and I permission to go from Seattle to Kentucky to visit some friends on an Amtrak train. That was a big thing to do. But we had a layover, basically, a stop in Chicago. And my brother and I thought, hey, we own this city. Let's act like we own it. Let's see what we can get away with. And we decided we would go up to the Sears Tower. And we said, let's get up to as high as we could go to the top floor. And I don't remember what floor it was, but it was really high. And let's just walk in as though we belong there, and let's see what happens. The worst they can do, we're juveniles, they can just escort us out. So we walk down to the Sears Tower. Somehow we got past security. This is a lot of years ago, so I don't remember what it was like for security. We got in the elevator. We went upstairs. We got to one high floor, and when the door opened, it was a big room full of cubicles, probably, 50 or 60 different people with cubicles. And we thought, okay, act as if. All right, here we go, Steve. Let's just act like we're supposed to be here, like we're not out of our place. We walked right to this back door where there was a balcony. We walked past everybody. We walked out to this balcony, looked over Chicago, thought, what a beautiful city. And the wind was blowing hard. We remember the Windy City. And then finally, a lady came up to us and said, who are you guys? And we said, oh, we're related to Mr. Sears. And after a few more questions, she figured out we were not related to anybody. And she escorted us out, and we left. But I always look back on that, and I've taught my kids and often taught, the different classes we do and so forth, that you do have to act as if, right? If you walk into a situation confidently, it just seems like less people will question you. Your thoughts on that?
Of course. I mean, I used to sneak into clubs, when I was in Miami. I remember my friends always told me, well, you get us in. And basically the moment, people are like animals, kind of. If they see a little bit of fear in you, a little bit of doubt, they will attack.
Yep.
So if you just go, and if you're leaving, look a little bit upset. That is the way. I'm not doing it anymore. Well, very rarely these days. But suddenly you just go, and you just, and the moment you hesitate, that's it.
That's it.
They got you.
Yep.
So while this book is not on sneaking into clubs,
no,
it's the same. It's like you said, it's the same mechanism. It's really that the moment you show doubt, and that is why lots of academics. I'm on Stanford faculty right now, and faculty usually is very, very hesitant to actually make a decision because they know so much. They have so many thoughts. Like, well, yeah, we have this and that. If you go to a faculty meeting, everything is quite slow. No matter what school you go to, it's, academics are well known for why? Because they know so much, but that is actually can be a hindrance. You don't get anything done, right? So sometimes you just have to go, and that's what you have to do when you want to lead people, when you want to convince people of yourself. You say, okay, I'm the right guy for this. Well, we have difficulties. This is a difficulty, but it's not difficult for me. I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And then you're perceived as being part of the solution and not part of the problem.
Exactly. That confidence really goes far. You say in the book, fear is the key factor in decision making. We fear making the wrong decision. Loss aversion is what you're talking about. And then you share the example, and I'm not going to give too much away because people need to go out and they need to get your book. It is really good. And we teach a sales course called Maximizing Sales Performance. And I got to tell you, it just confirms some of the things that we teach, but I've also learned a few things in here that, if it's okay with you, with your permission, I'll share. But I will tell you, George Clooney, you said in the book, has demonstrated his competence. He said early on, he said, the best actor never gets the job when they do auditions. Never. Why? Because they lack confidence. He goes on to say, actors go into auditions thinking, oh gosh, they are going to hate me. They are going to hate me. This insight marked a turning point for George Clooney. He said, I started to come in selling my confidence, not even my acting skills. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, I agree. And one thing you have to understand is that when people invite you to pitch, when people invite you for a job interview, you're already in because everything on paper is fine. You're good enough to get the job
in the first
spot.
Right.
In the first place, but why do they invite you? Because they want to, it's basically searching for negative information. They just want to make sure they're not making a mistake, because they would say yes, but they want to say, I want to meet the guy first and see. And, I used to conduct the interviews for applicants at Oxford for the economics and management program. After I was a student, I was there as a tutor and taught and did the interviews. And, every time we had applicants there, of course, I wanted to find the new Nobel Prize laureate and, but I couldn't do that. So the least thing I could do was just looking for, because the CVs were great. And then I had people in front of me and I questioned them looking for something that's wrong. And when I had the impression that, okay, something could be wrong here, I questioned more and more. So, and that's what I'm writing in the book. Don't try to be a good choice. You don't want to be a good choice. You have to eliminate everything that could make you a bad choice. You have to target people's fears. Why they're, you have to target, their fear to make a mistake by choosing you. And that is the very first step. And after that, it's about confidence. So this is a two-step process.
That's really good. So eliminate their fears, do some research ahead of time, know what some of their fears are, and then express that you're the person that can handle all this or whatever. Mm-hmm. All right. How do you talk about in the book delivering bad news versus good news? What are some thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's very underestimated how important it is that when you have good news, that you really maximize the impact, because you can get so much from good news, and you have to take advantage of this. If you have good news, make sure you're associated as much as possible with them. That means always deliver them in person, not via email, not via telephone. Go there in person. If you go to meetings, stand up so people see you. Talk as long as possible so people associate you with the good news. This will contribute to the perception of your competence immensely. But you can say, thank your team, be generous, and yet you're going to be the one who's associated. It's like when you give a present at a birthday party, everybody chipped in. The one presenting it is always going to be the one people associate, the birthday child will associate with the present, right?
Right.
And on the other hand, if you have bad news, quite the opposite. Just try to stay out of the picture. If you're in a meeting, stay seated. Make it as brief as possible, and then turn to some good news. If you have very bad news to deliver them, but immediately shift to what you've learned from the mistakes and tell them, so what are you going to do in the future? How are you going to develop, from that? So then again, bad news can even be good news, because they will associate with the key learnings and with the new models you're creating or whatever. And very good communicators, say, okay, I made a mistake. I really apologize. I take the blame, but this is what it's never going to happen again because of A, B, C. So you're shifting it away from something bad to something good. And the moment you talk about something good, you get up and are in the center stage again.
So the way I say that when I'm teaching people is, when things go wrong, don't live there. That's sort of the concept here, is move on to what the solution is. Move on to how you are the person that can change things to be better going forward. And here's how I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
You talk about framing, pre-framing. I think this is really critical, setting expectations properly.
Yeah. I mean, framing, the problem is, when you have a result, it's very hard to really entangle. So, what's responsible for a result? You have, you have a lawyer who took care of the case, and you have a result, good or bad. Now, you don't know what was how exactly was his competence involved? What are other factors involved? And the factors involved that were found, a formula by 2 American psychologists, they found that it's difficulty level that plays part, luck or bad luck, and effort. So these 3 factors plus competence affect the perception of a result. So in other words, if the difficulty level seems very high, if it seems like there was a lot of bad luck involved, and it seems like I didn't put a lot of effort in my past results, then my competence will of course shine, because then it must be the competence that was responsible for the result. So in other words, like, let's say you have, what does it mean? It means you have a task. You should always point out the difficulties before you take over that. Not only afterwards, because then it will sound like an excuse when you fail.
That makes sense.
At the beginning, point out the difficulty level, and tell them that it's tough luck because of this and this situation. But, and that's important, you say a lot of problems, but not for me. Confidence again. That doesn't mean you shouldn't point out the difficulty. Point out difficulties, because the more difficulties involved, the higher your perceived competence. And do it before, not after. Bad luck, point out bad luck, but always say, big problem, but not for me. I will take care of it. And that is key. So you have to rightly frame your competence. And that's one of the most important points. But once you understand it, you don't have to change your personality. It's just a mechanism. Because a lot of people say when they're successful, they say, I was just lucky, which is about the most stupid thing you can do. Because that really, people will like say, oh, how nice and humble, but this will destroy the perceived competence.
That's really good. That's good stuff. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question about language. Maybe you can even dip in there a little bit of gestures and things. But before we do that, I just want to remind everybody, make sure that you get this book, Convinced: How to Prove Your Competence and Win People Over. And I'll tell you what, it is a good book, and I stand behind it. So make sure that you get that book. Yeah. All right. So what are your thoughts around using certain words and language and tone and those are really tactical and important things. Not that I'm into tactics, but they do make a difference. I notice when I'm on stage, for example, depending on the audience or maybe the area of the country of the United States that I happen to be in, I might speak slightly different, maybe speed up my speed, maybe slow down, be more meaningful, depending on the context of the group that I'm speaking. If I'm working with someone one-on-one, I want to be aware of their style a little bit and be flexible enough to adjust my own. So would you maybe speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of research being conducted on how to speak like an expert, what a difference it makes. And some of I can just share a couple of findings with you.
Sure.
One of them is that speaking a bit faster is actually better for your perceived competence, like this right now. Why? Because people think that if you speak fast, you also think faster, and that is associated with intelligence. And of course, intelligence is very closely related to competence. So if you seem intelligent, you will also be perceived as more competent. So in other words, so see what I'm doing right now can be annoying probably. Sometimes people say, oh, so fast, and yet you will be perceived as more competent. And this is research, that was very, very, took very long, because they just did it with thousands of people, and people are just rating other people on tape. And so I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. Now, if you look at the bibliography, I mean, you see so many sites in the book. You have like 50 pages of only references.
Yeah, it's true.
It's just a lot of research that was conducted, not by me, but by my colleagues. Thank you. That took years and years and decades, and I just kind of put it together into a system. And so verbal communication is a chapter, and there you will find some suggestions on how to speak, the volume, the speed, the words, and pauses, question tags, all like something called power talking,
right,
which is really very, very effective. A technique called power talking, how to implement that, and it's one of the most powerful tools. How to use your language, as of course. I mean, it's not surprising, I presume, but very effective, very easy to change. And again, you don't have to change, because I think authenticity is key. Don't fake anything. You don't have to fake.
Agreed.
Anything. It's just some slight alterations in your everyday interaction. But it's the everyday interaction that matters, because that's what happens every day.
That's really good. I always tell people, don't fake it till you make it, but act as if, right? Put yourself in a place that a confident person. How would a confident person communicate like? How would they show that they're the good choice for the decision? Whatever. So we're going to come to a close here. How important is it? I wrote down a question here. How important is it to be likable?
Yeah, good point. Because likability and competence are two different impressions. You can. Sometimes we see movies where somebody's really, some lawyer who's like terrible person, but great lawyer. So if you're in real trouble, you would still go to him probably. But yet they're related. They're related by something known as the halo effect. So one positive aspect shines on another positive aspect. So even though they're two different topics or two different aspects, yet if you're more popular, if you're likable, you will be perceived as more competent. So being likable will help you a lot. You don't have to. It's not. You don't have to, but it's just helpful. And there's one chapter where I give the results of 40 years of research on likability, how to be more likable, which is quite interesting, because sometimes it can be extremely helpful. And it's not just sucking up or anything like that, but it's just some things you probably didn't know. If you make compliments, how you start a compliment, how to build a reservoir of goodwill. That's how they call it. And how to make specific compliments, not just say, good job, but, say something very specific what they did well. So, I liked how you were so concise and how you wrote it, in such few sentences, you put together all the important points. This is a good compliment, not just saying, great, that's empty, that's nothing. And, things like that. How do you do that? Again, without lying. But the question is, if you really like something, how do you say it to really maximize the impact? And things like that. And smiling, for instance. It's not necessary to smile. This is a big myth. As a matter of fact, when you talk about your core competencies, it can be very helpful not to smile at all. Because smiling all the time is associated with low status.
Oh, it is.
Who smiles?
Yeah.
A waiter, a salesman, who wants to sell you something, who needs to make a pitch. But if you're very, very, just watch movies of like super experts, they, barely smile. Smile when something is, funny, of course, or if you say hi, be polite. But if you talk about, whatever it is you have, whatever it is you're working on, you don't have to smile at all. It's a big myth. And eye contact, by the way, same, also quite interesting. Eye contact while you're speaking is very good, but not while you're listening. Why? Because who makes eye contact? It's a servant. You talk to me and I look at you. Yes, yes, yes. So again, it's low status. So if I look away while you talk to me, it can be very rude. I shouldn't overdo it, but I can kind of look around and, think and ponder while you speak. I don't have to look in your eyes all the time. Not at all. Quite the opposite. When I speak, I look you right into the eyes, like a master with his servant. Sorry, but that's in our mind. It's still like that. I talk to you and I tell you what to do. So this elevates my status, and nobody would say, "Oh, he looks at me. This is so rude." There's nothing rude about that. Same time, if you speak to me, I don't have to necessarily look you in the eye at all. I can, look around and say. Sometimes I, look you in the eye, and all these things that actually make such a difference that you probably never knew.
No, that's a good point. That depending on what you're projecting, whatever the discussion is, whatever you're trying to influence, you don't have to smile through that process, right? That can come across wrong. But I do say to my audiences, so tell me if you have a different view on this. I say to my audiences, smile more just in life. I mean, just in general, right? It doesn't mean you have to walk on the streets and smile 100% of the time. But we do need to smile a little bit more just for inner fulfillment and happiness. But in terms of influencing people, it's not.
Yeah, I'm not saying you shouldn't smile. I'm just saying that the idea you smile all the time, you don't have to. But it's better for you if you smile, you'll feel happier. Yeah. Because, there's an interesting experiment conducted that if you read a comic strip with a pencil, you probably know that, the Struck experiment. When either you read it with your pencil, I just don't have a pencil, but I have a chocolate bar like this, or like this. You perceive it as being funnier. Why? Because you're smiling. So if you're smiling, you tend to find things funnier and better because you signal to your brain that you're happy. So it goes both ways. We're happy, we smile, but also when we smile, our mood is getting better. So that's why for you it's actually good. For you it's nicer to smile because you just feel better. So I absolutely agree with you, but I'm just saying that you don't have to smile through the whole conversation at all, and you don't have to, feel the urge. I should smile more.
Well, it could come across as if you're doing it constantly without looking away or without having a straight face and focusing a little bit, you can come across as manipulative, and we don't want to do that. So you want to be natural.
We don't want to. We don't want to come across. Like you said, yes, of course. But we, of course, we do it all the time. What is manipulative sounds very negative, but of course, we all want to exert influence. Of course, if I want to go to an Indian restaurant with my girlfriend, I kind of try to get her into the mood for, probably turn on Indian music before, that is many, but it's better than forcing people, right? I would say.
Yeah, exactly. I just think on the lines of mimicry, right? We don't want to mimic someone. We want to, just be human, be real, but be influential and be confident in your ideas. I think one of the great things I found in the book was just the fact that, listen, if you want it, go get it. Right? Mm-hmm. If you want that end result, go get it. Go develop yourself and get the skills. When push comes to shove, believe that you're the man. Believe that you're the woman that can get that. That's right. Exactly. Let's do this together.
Yeah, I just had to put in the camera. It's been a while.
No, you're right. Hey, listen.
Subliminal persuasion.
No, this is awesome.
Nobody will just notice. Things will just happen.
I love it.
I really like the cover. I just got it this week, and I was really happy because you see it in print, but it just looks much nicer. I think they did a good job with the cover. Sometimes I see a book and I think it's ugly, but I really think it's really nice. And I like your book too. I like this classic. I see it in the background. I like kind of black. The colors are great. Red, black, gold, nice, very strong color.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is there a reason why you did red? Is that because it's a strong
color? It's just, I don't know. There's something about it. I think, blue would have been nice. Yeah. But black, I don't know.
And for people that feel, it has a great feel to it too. They did a good job.
Even though I was at Barnes & Noble here at Union Square, and there's another book that almost looks the same. This just came out, and I was like, "Damn,
No, you gotta get this book."
It has a totally different topic, but some business. I forgot the title, but I thought, shit, I was holding it next to it. I thought, damn, how did this happen? I don't know. We didn't know about that.
All right, so thank you for being on the show. Do you have any workshops beyond the book, or what would you like to share with the audience?
Well, I give negotiation trainings and advisory. So, I help companies. I was in Jakarta, in Indonesia, in Germany, I'm in the UK. And I help companies when they have certain deals and even individuals when they have an important negotiation. I prepare them for the negotiation. Sometimes I lead the negotiation. I was leading a negotiation a while ago in Dallas, Texas, about an oil and gas platform and things like that. Very, very different topics. And I give trainings, of course, on reading and influencing people, which is negotiation, the social dynamics of influence. And that is my main profession.
Wow, that is really good. You've done a great job writing this book. There is a lot of positive and good data in here that can help you succeed, that can improve your confidence and win people over, by Jack Nasher. Thank you, Jack, for being on the show. You bet.
Thanks.
You bet.